Okay, hello everyone. Today I'm interviewing John Kunkel, a very talented musician, vocalist, and producer. How are you doing today, John?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So, you're a big fan of FL Studio, I understand. What do you like about FL compared to other workstations?
I just love it because it's just the perfect DAW that lets you just do so many different things. I think it's really meant for people that are trying to get an idea out of their head really fast. It's really creative. It has a lot of built-in options that allow you to kind of just create. I think the riff machine's like a good example of that. Like how FL just kind of helps you create melodies on the fly. I really just love the way it looks. For some reason, and if I'm working in something, I have to like the way it looks. If I'm going to
Yeah,
be sitting there for hours and hours, it's got to look good. And I think the biggest reason, though, why I like FL is probably because it's the piano roll that really sells me out. It's
mm.
just so easy to use. I find myself usually writing 90% of the time with my mouse instead of my keyboard. So
Really?
just having that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, usually it just works out that way. Unless I'm trying to do like a full chord, then I
Mm.
might go to the keys. But a lot of times I'll just do everything on the piano roll, and it just works out, marvelously in NFL. And I've tried it in other programs like like Ableton and Cubase and Logic, and I just can't. It's probably just because I'm not used to it. It's not to bash on the other programs, but
Mm-mm.
FL just seems to click with me in a certain way that other programs just haven't been able to deliver, I think.
Totally. The piano roll is one of a kind, I must say. Is there anything
I mean,
about FL that you're not a huge fan of that you think they could possibly improve on?
yeah, for sure. I think definitely they could improve on their mixer,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that you can't, for instance, turn down all the volume sliders automatically, like you can't just select like 10 of them and turn them all down. So, in a way, it's not a bad thing because I've learned to bus a lot of my main tracks. So I'll just bus all of my drums and all of my basses and just route them to one channel and then turn them up and down. But even then, if there's like a snare that's too loud in the drum route or a hi-hat that's too loud, I still have to go back and turn those down
Yeah.
and do stuff like that. So I think that's really the main thing. And then the other main thing is FL has a lot of, if you're trying to use hardware plugins, it can be really difficult sometimes to work with it. It's just the routing options are really complicated. And if you're like me, I have an Apollo Quad Duo, and you're trying to use UAD plugins. The latency issue can really be kind of disheartening because if you're trying to use some of those DSP plugins with FL, you're going to have mad latency, and then trying to figure out and calculate all the numbers to get that sorted out is really kind of a not really ideal, I would say.
Right. So you do everything in FL?
Yeah, I do just about everything in FL. The only times I might go into another program, it'll be Ableton, and that's usually just to process some UAD plugins. And sometimes I like to use Ableton for just coming up with different drum patterns, just different, ideas. I also like the fact that in Ableton, time stretching is just really, really simple. With FL, you have to go and drag and
Yeah.
stretch, and
Yeah.
so that kind of becomes a pain. But so there'll be occasions where I'll use Ableton if I'm doing a really sample kind of heavy project. But those are the two main that I stick to. I really don't mess around with anything else just because I don't have the time to learn them, and I'm really
Yeah.
comfortable with what I got.
Totally. Have you tried, just as a side question, following on from that, have you thought about rewiring like FL into Ableton or tried any of that?
Yeah, I've tried it before. I've never actually been able to see it done, I guess, correctly. Not correctly. I just haven't been able to see it done the way that I would use FL and Ableton. And so I'm not exactly sure how other people use it. And so I'd be curious to learn how other people route Ableton, I'm sorry, FL into like Cubase or Ableton. But I feel like most people just do that so that they can use the FL beat sequencer, which
Yeah.
to me is kind of like not really the reason why I use FL. I use the beat sequencer hardly for anything anymore because everything I do from my drum patterns to any other kind of sequencer, I usually just go straight to the piano roll.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I use the beats the sequencer for is just for like adding the kick, just four kicks and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it.
Got ya.
So
Awesome. Uh, Okay, so what does your creative process look like? Like, how do you get from a simple idea, say a melody, to a fully fledged track?
Yeah, so I think the key for me is always never to do it the same, you know. So some days I'll start out with like a bass line that I really like, and I'll just start out with the chord progression. Since a lot of the music that I make is, you know, mainly melodic and it's not really sample heavy, I'll always start off with like a 8 or 16 bar loop of a bass chord progression, or sometimes I'll just go straight to a pad and just kind of create something there. A lot of times I'll just create like a little arpeggio that just has a lot of reverb or a lot of delay on it just to kind of get the feeling going of kind of what I'm going for. And since most of my tracks have always been pretty atmospheric and kind of big, I usually just try to go for something that gets that sound right away. I don't like working with really dry stuff from the beginning. I like to kind of put a lot of effects on things before I get started. A lot of times I'll just load in a chain that I've saved from another song that I really like, and then I'll just try a different preset or a different sound on it from the synth that I'm using to kind of get that same vibe to get me in that zone, you know. So it's a lot about getting myself into that specific zone of kind of creating the environment for inspiration. Because, like I said, if I just work with just dry, straight melodies, it can get really boring. And I do the
Mm.
same thing when, you know, when I write songs, because sometimes I'll just write songs on guitar,
Mm.
and I'll always go straight to like the delay pedal, and then I'll add chorus and reverb, because just dry guitar just doesn't really do much for me, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, cool. So, you're a vocalist and musician as well, and you touched on the fact that sometimes you start songs on guitar. Being a vocalist, does that influence your songwriting and production? Even if you haven't got vocals at the start, are you producing a song with vocals in mind?
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, when I write music, I'm usually thinking about how I'm going to lay vocals on this. I don't always think about that until I've already discovered what I want to do as far as melodies and as far as like a chord progression. I've never really done where you start off with the vocal melody first and then you work your music around that. I've never done that before, and I know a lot of people have that method, but I always like to create a nice background, and then my vocals kind of, you know, aren't really always at the forefront, but they're kind of more, you know, complementing it. And there are other times though where I'm writing a song like, okay, this has to be a really strong vocal track, and so I have to kind of cut back a little bit on all the effects and all the, you know, making sure I don't have too many things going on at the same time, so I can leave room for the vocals, which can be really hard to do because sometimes it's so easy to just keep on adding more and more and more, and then when it's time to do the vocals, when the track is, you know, kind of done, you're like, oh shoot, now I got to delete a lot of stuff because it's not gonna, you know, it's clashing too much with the vocal. And as a vocalist too, you always want to create a song that is not, sometimes when you create a melody that can be like a main lead or like a melodic, you know, background sound, that can kind of influence the way that your vocal melody is going to be too. So sometimes I got to be careful to not, you know, predict or create a vocal, or I'm sorry, a music melody that's going to affect my, you know, my vocal range, because it can really limit your, you know, just your possibilities. And so it's always nice to, you know, sometimes I'll just remove everything that I've done and just leave the bass underneath and then sing over that and then recreate the melodies on top of it.
Okay, cool. Uh, I'm listening to through Together We Shine, and one thing I noticed is that your vocals sound incredibly clean. What technical advice would you give to, say, a producer who's also a singer or a producer who's recording a singer vocalist?
Well, I think there's always like the basics of just making sure that wherever you're doing your vocals in, you know, you got decent acoustics and that you're not getting too much reverberation. And you know, if you have an air conditioning on inside of your house or your apartment, wherever you're recording, and turn that off, even though it's going to be hot for a little bit, just because even those little subtle differences will kind of seep into the recording later. Especially when you go in and you add reverb and delay, and then you're going to notice those things, you know, a lot more later. And especially when you add compression later, it's going to really bring up all those little unwanted things. So as far as recording, just making sure that you're recording everything with the preamp that's not oversaturating your voice,
Hmm.
that's kind of leaving a little bit of transparency unless you're going for that sound. And then also just making sure that you're recording at a pretty good level. You know, you want to be recording around like, usually I record around like -3 dB, just to kind of make sure that it's not too high but not
Mm,
too low
mm,
either. And then if I want to, I can kind of normalize the vocal if I want to. But and then as far as actually post production, I think it's really important to just try a lot of different things with vocals. There isn't like one right way of doing vocals. Um, I've never really watched any tutorials on how to do vocals or anything like that. Well, I have, but I've never applied any of those techniques. I just kind of have a feel, and every time I do a different song, you know, like the plug-in chain might be different, or you know, the type of reverb I might use might be different. Sometimes I like to add like a doubler effects on vocals, and that'll just kind of give it like a certain body. And then another thing I do is I do a lot of double tracking. So I'll record two vocals of the same exact melody and then just layer those together, and I'll just stereo pan one of them and just leave one at the middle, and it kind of creates a nice little just kind of like it just creates like a larger effect. So
mm,
sorry,
mm.
that's my email right there. I'm going to turn that down real quick.
It's all good, man. Awesome. So this is a bit of a cliche question, but it's always interesting. What inspires you to make music? It can be an artist, it can be, you know, nature, just whatever.
Yeah, I think what inspires me the most to make music is just music itself. I mean, when I listen to other people create songs, when I hear other people's you know, melodies and ideas, I really feed off of that, you know. And so a lot of it has to do with just having listened to different music over the years and just being in different moods.
Mm,
Uh, you know, so I guess emotionally, you could say that the way that you feel, at least in my situation, the way that I'm feeling, if I'm happy, if I'm sad, if I'm upset or mad, can really affect the way that my songwriting will be.
mm,
But usually, I'd say predominantly it's just other artists and just a lot of eras too, you know. So like I like a lot of stuff from the '80s. I like a lot of stuff from the '90s, you know, and so I'll just kind of go and into like a nostalgic moment to just, you know, kind of pick and choose things that I like and then try to create my own music out of that.
cool. Do you ever get like creative block or writer's block? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm usually in here about 8 hours a day, or if not, sometimes 10. And the best way to deal with creative block is like if you're just not able to overcome um, a song because you just can't figure out what to do, just move on to another song or move on to something else like sound design, you know, like create
Mm,
your own bass or synth patches for a little bit, you know, and then rest on it. I think usually the biggest creative blocks that I have aren't necessarily with music, but it's actually writing vocal melodies that I think are really good. And so what I do in that case is if I can't write a certain song at that moment, I'll just move on to a next song that is going to be perhaps easier to work on in that moment. Sometimes I just walk away for a little bit and listen to someone else, listen to other music to get
mm,
ideas for the genre that I'm doing. So like vocally, I might go and listen to another artist for a little bit. If it's like something to do with more, I guess, dance music, then I'll just go and listen to a few tracks that are similar to what I'm trying to do.
mm, mm.
So it's all about just maybe sometimes just moving away from that situation so that you don't get more and more frustrated.
Totally. So I want to touch on your album. I know you're working on one at the moment, but you also have Together We Shine.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people watching this, you know, they've released singles, they produce singles, but they haven't made an album. What does the
Mhm.
process look like?
For an album, it's something that is just it's one of those things where you can't really just work on it every single day. Only that, you know, I think a lot of people have this idea that whenever people are writing albums, that they're just, you know, just writing that one album day in, day out, day in, day out. And I think that can be pretty stressful. And usually, what I try to do is I try to have a lot of different projects that I'm working on, whether it's by myself or with other people, to kind of get away from that and not just be so focused on just writing my album all the time. But you know, usually it's just a mix of just writing a little bit here and there every day,
Mm,
fixing something in one song. And then another day, I might be writing a whole new song completely. You know, if I don't feel that the album has enough songs, or the way I look at it is, you know, it could always be a B-side for a single release or something.
mm,
So
mm,
it's really important to just keep on writing, but not always for the album that you're working on. You know, it's really about just taking breaks so that you can kind of step back and look at the big picture. I think the hardest part too about writing an album is trying to see whether or not all these songs really mesh together well, if they flow together well. And when you're making a New Division album, it's kind of hard because you don't necessarily have, it's not really hard. It's actually kind of easier because you don't have like a deadline. So I mean, pretty much, we're independent. We're not signed to any label other than my own, and so the album can be released whenever we want. So it's nice to have that freedom to just kind of do things a little bit at a time. And it's really about just kind of like they say, like, how do you eat an elephant? It's like one piece at a time, one bite at a time. So
Mm.
it's just a matter of just being patient and not getting overwhelmed and also not trying to put something out too fast either.
Got you. So you mentioned you released through your label, which is Division 87 Records, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. As a label manager, what advice would you give to producers who are just starting to look at releasing their work?
I think one of the main things is I think every label says this too, but I think originality is pretty important. I mean, people want to be able to listen to something that they haven't heard before because there's just so much stuff that's the same over and over. And I think the biggest thing is just doing something that you feel is something you're proud of and something that's original. I think a lot of people will send me demos and the music isn't really anything worth listening to because of the fact that you can tell that they're trying to rip off something else,
Hmm.
and it kind of makes the music itself a little cheaper, and so I think that the biggest thing is just to try to be original as much as you can. Now that doesn't mean that you can't steal or take ideas from other people and other influences and put them in your own music, but there was a really good tip the other day on the Freshly Squeezed Samples page that said, if you want a creative challenge, then try to mixing two or three genres
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good example of what it means to be original. Because I think a lot of music today can be original, even though even though everything seems kind of oversaturated. If you just apply some principles like that.
Sure. So for a newer producer who, because I know a lot of people start out by copying other artists, and I do think that's a good way to learn
Hmm.
new techniques and all
Definitely.
that. But how do you
Yeah.
get from that stage of copying and analyzing others' work to that more original stage, that creative stage where you're making music that is original? Um,
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should say that because I started off the same exact way. I think a lot of the first songs I ever did was really kind of like remakes or copying people. So I honestly don't think that that's a bad way to start off,
mm.
because I think you learn a lot through that process, you grow a lot, but at the same time, also be trying to create your own stuff that's original. If you're really into like melodic kind of music and you're not like sample heavy, then try to create your own chord progressions and try to create your own, small little 16 bar loops, with your own ideas, and then try to build a full song out of that. If you're into like sampling music and stuff, then I think you have it even easier because then you can really just go in and just try all kinds of different sampling techniques. And if you're going to be doing sampling, then Ableton, and get like Ableton Push or something, and mess around with that kind of stuff because that's really going to get you going. Uh, so I think I think that those are really the main ways that you can try to break away from I guess being labeled as someone who copies other people.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. I mean, listening to your music, it's very diverse, I would say. A lot of it
Hmm.
is indie, but you've got, a few dance tracks in there, more commercial sounding dance tracks, I suppose you could say. From a
Hmm.
skill development perspective, do you think it's good for producers to, say, dabble in different styles and stretch themselves like that?
Yeah, I think absolutely because I think that's what makes every artist a little bit different. Like in my case with New Division, before I really got into learning dance music, I was just mainly doing stuff on like an Alesis Micron, which is it's kind of like a mini micro chord. It's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
simple kind of keyboard, and so I used to think that all electronic music was made like that. And then once I started finding out how people made styles like trance and house and progressive house, That's really when I started learning how to work in like FL Studio,
Mm.
and that's really around the time where I started learning about things like compression and EQing and all these things that I just thought were only for people that had the jobs of being studio engineers. So me stretching outside of my genre, which was, mainly kind of like, just indie electronic stuff, into producing some more housey stuff, some more trance and things like that. That's what really started getting me interested in learning all these different production techniques, and then it just changed my entire view on music, and it also made it 10 times more interesting because music wasn't just anymore about me going and writing a song on a keyboard and then waiting to get a studio to book a studio and then go and record what I'd written, but I could actually do this on my laptop, and then you start realizing that the sky's the limit once you start learning those different production techniques. And I think jumping across genres also is good because you sort of learn different ways to play around with the bass, or you learn different ways to play with like leads or synths or whatever. So I think it's really important to always be continually, learning.
Totally, totally. So you're also a sound designer for Sample Magic, I think. Is it
That's
is it
correct. Yeah.
Chillwave Volume 1 and 2?
Yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
Cool. So is there anything you've learned from developing products that can be applied or, applied to production as a whole?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you really learn to think in the terms of how is this going to be used by the person on the receiving end, and so you really start thinking about not just what sounds necessarily good, but also what is going to be practical. And then one of the things too is I did some patches for Silent, and one of the things that you always notice about most presets is that they're always stereo, but then working in any program that whenever you have all your sounds in stereo, it's going to be a problem later when you're mixing down and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned that keeping things in mono is really important through that process because it's just easier to work with those signals rather than just everything being stereo, like your bass stereo and then your leads are stereo and then your melodies are all stereo. So it can really muddy up a mix. But as far as the chill wave stuff, I think, I just learned a lot about, I worked on those packs with a friend of mine, and so he has a very different way of working than I do. I mean, he's a Pro Tools guy,
Mm-hmm.
and so working with him was interesting because here I am on FL Studio, and then he's on Pro Tools, and then we get to really similar results sometimes using two very different programs.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always something that I'll notice about him, like, oh, his drums are punchier. I want to know how he does that. And then sometimes it'll be like, how do you get your basses to sound that fat? So there's always those little subtleties that you learn along the way by working with someone else. But you also learn to just, I think, work in, and put in the hours to get it done. It's not making a 2 gig sample pack can take a lot of time,
Yeah.
and so, but I mean, it's fun though. It's great. I love doing it.
Awesome. So just following on from that, do you do much collaboration?
Yeah, I do. Actually, up until this last year, I didn't really collaborate with anyone, but this year was actually the first year where I started working with a few different people. Most notably, obviously, David from Freshly Squeezed
Yeah,
Samples,
yeah.
David Sherlock. Been working on him for over a year now on an album that we're going to be doing. Hopefully, I'm not leaking out any information by saying that, but so we've been working together with that for a while. I've also worked with a few other people, one guy in Poland on a track, and then with a few other bands, like remix swapping and stuff like that. That's been really fun, remixing for them and then having them remix us.
Cool, cool. Uh, all right, so we'll jump onto these quickfire questions.
Hmm.
Uh, the first one is, if you had to listen to one artist on repeat for 24 hours other than yourself, who would it be?
One song or one
No, one
artist?
artist. Yeah, one
Oh,
song
one
would be
artist.
that'd be torture.
Yeah, I was like, well, I don't know about that. It sounds like what they do in like Abu Ghraib or whatever, those weird places. But I would listen to Depeche Mode probably. because I just love their catalog. I love all the eras that they go through, and um, most notably, stuff in the '90s is what I really like a lot. But I'd have to say them just because they're kind of like my biggest influence as far as making music.
Awesome. Okay, favorite synth plugin.
Favorite synth plugin. This one's hard because I always fight between Zebra and Massive, but I'd have to say Zebra though because it's got so many different features and there's just it's endless what you can do with it. So at the moment, I really like Zebra a lot. That's my favorite one.
Have you managed to check out Steve Duda's new synth, Serum?
No, that one looks really amazing though. I mean, I'm pretty excited to get my hands on that one, but it's like $200 though, so I got to wait a little bit.
200. Oh, it's 129 at the moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, it's quite well
Oh man,
priced.
they're lying to us over here in the States.
Oh, okay. All right, favorite effect plugin.
Favorite effects plugin. My favorite effects plugin at the moment probably has to be Arts Acoustic Reverb. I love those big, clean reverbs. So that's the one that I use the most right now that I really love.
Cool. And finally, with the favorite questions, what's your favorite sample library or libraries? You can name more than one if you want.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think one of my favorite ones of all time that I've used on so many tracks is Thomas Penton Essentials Volume 3 is one of my favorites. I mean, I use that for everything. It can be for dance, it could be for actually a lot of New Division stuff was actually made just with that library. Another one that I really love a lot too is one that the X for one that Dead Mouse and Steve Duda put out like in 2009. That one is you can hear so many people using like the top loops on that.
Mm-hmm.
And just yeah, I love that one. And then my third favorite would probably have to be Slow Motion Tokyo, which is like an old Big Fish audio library,
Okay.
which I think is still one of the best sounding for like creating like good ambient atmospheres and noise background.
Cool. If you had to work with one person, who would it be?
To work with one person, I guess in person right now, it'd probably have to be David from Freshly Squeezed because we've
Yeah.
never actually worked in person. We've always worked separately across, from London to LA, but he'd probably be the person I want to work with just because he can create just like the most crazy melodies and just work on MIDI packs all day, which is what I love. So I'd love to work with him in person one day,
Awesome.
which we will eventually.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay, final question. If you had to go back uh, to the start of the time you started producing, what what advice do you wish you'd been told?
I wish I'd been told to get a good laptop, a decent laptop, download FL Studio, and start learning it when I was 13.
Yeah.
Because I really didn't start learning anything about production until I was about, I don't know, maybe 20. So I got on started really late. And so I wish I had learned to do all that stuff when I was really young because then I could be like as talented as like Matt Neon, or someone like
Mm,
that who's just
mm.
instead of playing PlayStation, when they got home every day, they were in their studio just working on music. So, but unfortunately, when I was 13, they didn't really have FL Studio. So,
Totally, man. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. For those of you watching, check out John's work with the new division. If you have any questions, leave a comment and try to get back to you. Awesome. Thanks, John.
hey, thank you, man.